In my last video, I covered Black and White and its development, and if you're unfamiliar with the topic, then I would recommend starting with that one first. Thanks for checking it out. Now, for you youngins that don't remember the expansion pack era, it works a little differently than modern DLC, and I think mostly for the better. Think of it as if Phantom Liberty for Cyberpunk 2077 was basically what every DLC aspired to be, and it had to be released in box at stores since this was before the advent of digital game shops like Steam. They would often add entirely new campaign, or at least add new mechanics that change the way you play whatever game it is expanding on. Now, Creature Isle does not have the well-documented cycle that the main game had. This all comes from an interview our friend Peter Molyneux and developer Jonty Barnes did for IGN in 2001 before the release of Creature Isle. The gist is that Black and White's immediate success led to the idea of making 2 expansions to address the main criticisms people had with the game. One with the focus on strategy for those who felt that that side of the game was underbaked, which ended up being cancelled so they could focus more on that aspect in Black and White 2. The other expansions had a focus on expanding on the creature. The Creature expansion was quickly and formally announced under the name Creature Isle, and Molyneux had discussed that there were some features that they had wanted to implement earlier in Black and White's development cycle that they couldn't have done, and that Creature Isle is a perfect vehicle for revisiting these features. After a short development cycle, Creature Isle was released in January 2002, a mere 9 months after the release of the base game, to a warm reception. Welcome to Creature Isle. Now, let's take a look at what Creature Isle adds to the experience. Creature Isle advertises these new features on the box: new creatures, improved creature AI, and a lack of competition with other gods. They replace the competition with gods with a bunch of mini-games, trials. The biggest and best feature here, though, is a second creature that your creature raises, named Tyke, who your creature teaches and affects like you do to your own.
Yeah, look! Your creature has a pet, dude! Alright! This is beautiful, man! I gotta tell the town!
Your creature will scold and praise Tyke based on his own beliefs and behaviors. Going back to that interview for IGN, there are things mentioned in this interview that sound interesting but do not really make it into the final product due to the short development cycle. And to be fair to Molyneux, he did say that they were trying to include these features, but he made no promises. I'm sure this won't be a problem with future releases. Things from this article that are left out of the game is the fact that you can't actually bring your Tyke back into the original game like he wanted to include here. This interview also included some cool things about Black and White 2 here, as well as more info about the promised console ports of Black and White that we'll talk about at another time, I promise. Now, how well does this expansion pack actually fundamentally expand on the game? I'll repeat that I wasn't the biggest fan of the creature despite how cool of an idea, even when I was a kid, and as an adult, I'm even less wowed by the tech, but more interested in seeing how it can be implemented more into the core gameplay loop. Unfortunately, I don't think Creature Isle necessarily fixes any of the core problems I had with the base game's implementation. The game once again does not take full advantage of the features it builds Black and White, and Creature Isle could use a real substantive sandbox and post. Creature Isle has little to offer on the narrative front, much like the base game. It's just enough to make the game make sense, but there's nothing to chew on, and like the base game, it's not necessarily a bad thing, it does the job. It all starts with your singing missionaries, and they summon you after converting this island.
Our god is huge! He has a mighty creature! He is all-powerful! He came from the skies. He travels between lands. If you believe in him, he will come. See? He's coming! You do believe!
You learn that this is an island that has creatures who were abandoned by their gods or their gods were killed, both probably by Nemesis. And then one creature united them so that they could live a good life free on the island.
But he was defeated in war. With my god banished to the void, I was alone. Night became day. Days turned to months. Without a god, I couldn't impress anyone. So I decided to end my life and join my master in the eternal void. However, fate intervened. I was rescued from the waters by Mercurio, an ancient and wise godless creature. From that moment onward, I was not alone. And Mercurio, having prevented my death, gave me a reason to live. Over time, we attracted others like ourselves. And one day we discovered a tiny newborn creature. But she was different. So Mercurio looked after her and became her guardian. She was called Eve, and her existence meant our band of creatures would never die out.
They have an exclusive brotherhood, and to get in, your creature must pass their trials to join them. The first trial gives your creature an egg that, when hatched, has a baby chicken creature that your creature must raise and teach along the way. While you're doing your trials, you have the option of leaving Tyken daycare, but I didn't really see any advantage to this, so I let him watch and learn from my creature the entire time. After completing these trials, you learn of a female creature who is impressed by your creature's progress and sees you as a potential mate, but you cannot see or meet her until you are deemed worthy. Now, what kind of trials await you? Sports, and sports. It's basically a mini-game pack. It substitutes the simulation god game with a variety of mostly toothless and mechanically boring physics or AI demos. While the first game is not as mechanically rich as its many systems would lead you to believe, its expansion offers even less to chew on. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad. What is bad, though, is most of these trials, and I'll show you all of them.
Speed round time.
First off, bowling, which you can only guide your creature in, so it's kind of boring but easy. You fight a rhino with the source, which is also copyright-friendly to the Force. This one is only tough if your creature does not know the healing miracle, and in which case, man, what are you doing? I don't know, something about spamming clicks to hit reminds me of playing KOTOR as a kid on the Xbox and just preloading all of my hits with no thoughts, no strategy. Except unlike that game, there actually is no strategy, even with an adult brain. Marbles, which is like bowling, but more fun in my opinion, since there's at least a little strategy. There's a race with a turtle who use miracles to slow you down, but joke's on everyone. There's an obvious shortcut through half the map, so you can win in one go. What's more fun than winning in one go? Okay, for an actually fun and interactive one, you get to shoot this guy with a horse head with a ballista so he can get ingredients to uncurse himself, which is actually entertaining and stupid in the way Black and White is at its best. Look at it. One, where you send your creature to destroy buildings, which activates neurons in my brain. The last of ones I even remotely enjoyed was one that's an on-rail shooter where you have to kill marauders and get a high score. Who doesn't love shooting galleries? Not necessarily a lot of high marks here, but they're short. The rest range from boring to frustrating. A sheep herding one where you only do one sheep at a time and a wolf is stealing them. It's tedious, but easy. Then you play hide and seek with that wolf, but since you're God, you can see him and hear him, so it's incredibly easy and once again boring. Next, you have your creature water plants until they're fully grown, so he has to come back day after day to do it. Boring and tedious. One where you're supposed to rescue a creature by sneaking past some guards, but I used a teleport miracle to make that much easier. There's a board game one that's like Candyland, but since everything is so slow, it gets very tedious very fast if you lose it like I did. One where you have to protect buildings from ogres, but they all move at different speeds and your creature has to scare them individually. And once you get the pattern, it's pretty easy and boring. The most frustrating trial that didn't offer any intended or unintended shortcuts is this fucking Mandrill soccer challenge where you have to kick the ball through different goals under a time limit with other mandrills kicking the ball away and other hazards. The only problem is your creature is slow. If you don't line him up correctly, one wrong kick will completely kill your ability to recover and get all the goals in time. And if you meet one of the obstacles, you're done. You won't be able to even get the ball back. Just restart the trial. I mean, look at this. Also, this missionary boat blowing one that goes on for far too long. The problem with these trials is only a few actually have the player having direct control over anything. Everything is done through the creature minus the shooting trials and board games. You're involved enough to have to micromanage, but not in direct enough control to make any of these about your own skill. Once you beat all the other trials and all these totems are raised, you have one final trial from Rufus, the second in command, where you gotta bring these rings up within a certain amount of time, and if you get caught, you get frozen. But joke's on them, there's this path that basically leaves you unbothered, so this is pretty easy. You do that, and now you're a member of the Brotherhood. Your little guy gets the sick membership ankle monitor, and you now get to fight Mercurio for the rights to meet Eve. No challenge.
Finally, I have found a worthy, perfect mate. Now we are a pair. I believed all along you were the one, and I was willing to wait forever for you.
This is simply wonderful.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, what's this?
You meet Eve, you get some credits, and your tyke is no longer a chicken, but a mini baby version of your creature. How cute. That's it. That's all the trials, and that is basically all that Creature Isle has to offer. You can replay trials, you can grow the 3 villages if you want, but other than that, there's not much here to play with for the expansion pack. Did they succeed in improving on the creature side of Black and White? In my opinion, not really. The AI is noticeably less frustrating when it comes to getting them to do the tasks you want them to do, but since this is just a bunch of mini-games, there really isn't any way to creatively use this improved creature AI. And of course, the AI probably isn't good enough to actually base a whole game around or use in any different way than you did in the base game, but still, it would have been nice if they had gotten to put this AI into the base game to actually see its tangible improvements. It's very apparent that this coming out less than a year after release wasn't enough time to add anything truly new to the game. The biggest addition, Tyke, in practice doesn't add much to the player, and he isn't incorporated into the trials outside of the one that's about teaching him the skills your creature already knows, which is disappointing because your creature having to teach its own creature how to live is a compelling idea, but that's not what Creature Isle is really about. I think for something like this to work, you either need to give direct control of the creature to the player or make the game even more hands-off by teaching the creature miracles and how to do things and letting them go off in their own with their Tyke. You can almost entirely ignore Tyke in the campaign, similar to how the creature could be superfluous to the goals of the base game, if you know what you're doing. Now, I don't think it's necessary or helpful in practice to put him in daycare, as he never ruined a trial for me, but he also did little to aid in the trials, and without other lands or villages to go along with the Creature Isle, there's even less opportunity for the AI to shine compared to the base. It's a shame, too, because it's a cool idea, and if they had been able to incorporate Tyke into the base game, there at least would have been more opportunities to at least find something interesting or some silly behaviors to make a replay worthwhile. I don't really think Tyke in the base game would have done much, but it would have given me more opportunities to play in a more sandbox-focused campaign. Tyke amounts to a little tech demo masquerading as a full-blown featured in a retail minigame expansion pack for a god game that was marketed around the idea of your god having the freedom to be who they want to be and do what they want to do. There's a cool idea here in theory, but it is not at all executed effectively enough to base this expansion around it, and even with it, there's just not a lot here. This feels closer to modern DLC than the expansion packs at the time. It can be fun to play, it can be incredibly frustrating, and I think the idea of a strategy expansion pack had more potential to improve upon the base game's flaws than what they ended up doing here. There are some extra modes to talk about real quickly as I wrap up, as well as a feature that nobody has cracked the code on whether it's real or not in-game, so let's get into that. Skirmish mode returns, essentially unchanged from the base game, so same gameplay, warts and all, but your Tyke is here at least, which gives you more freedom to play around and see how he could have affected the base game. And let's just say it's not that much. He's basically just a second mini creature that can make it even easier to take villages since his miracles get you a ton of belief. Now, I imagine if you taught your creature to be aggressive and you pass it on to Tyke, you could destroy villages pretty quickly with fire and lightning miracles, but my own problem is that in previous playthroughs, destructive creatures tend to kill your own villages and villagers, so I tend to avoid that for my own health. Other than that, Skirmish is the same, and the God AI is bad, and you will destroy them. Multiplayer also allows you to use Tyke, which might be mildly more interesting, but servers have been down for so long, and I don't know a soul who even knows about this game, let alone its expansion, so I mean, hit me up if you want to try it. Now, there is a feature here that no one is really sure if it works or not. It's called the Source, the rip-off force, and allegedly, if you beat every creature in the dojo fight, which is super easy, you get the Gauntlets of Power, which give you the ability to use the Source, which, as I said, rip off the Force. But one problem, nobody knows how to use it. The 2 fight trials you do in the game feature creatures that have the Source, where they throw rocks at you during the fight, and damn, if you're going to tell me I have it, I need to know if I can use it. I've looked on the internet and only found vague references like this ancient tips page, and this guide that also ponders the exact question I'm about to ask. How do you use it? I'm not sure, but I have to find out if it's even possible first before I drive myself crazy trying random things in the game. Alright, so let me check the Black and White Discord community, which, yes, not only exists, but is pretty active and helped me get some technical difficulties figured out. Anywho, nope, nothing here. Alright, let me check the forums this Discord was formed from, and the only mention is this post from 2009 that says it's a scam. Well, good enough for me. I theorize they probably intended to include it as a usable feature since they mentioned it in the pre-release interview with Molyneux with the other cut features, and it ended up being cut as something the player can do, but that they left the mechanism to do it with the gauntlets. Creature Isle was received decently. with those who praise it enjoying the expanded pet simulation AI, and those who criticize it disliking the minigames and lack of micromanaging and strategic elements. I obviously fall in the latter and appreciate what this expansion tries to do without thinking it really succeeds in doing that. But there is fun to be had here in quick spurts, and you get your money's worth. Yeah. So the problem is, good luck buying this or the original. It's not available digitally, and as we covered in the last video, most likely will not be in the near future. After Creature Isle, Lionhead and its satellite studios would go to work on a number of projects, one of which would become a massively successful franchise that would come to define the studio. But in the next video, we'll be covering the truly forgotten, canceled games of this era of Lionhead's history. From console ports of Black and White to games with truly insane and interesting ideas that never made it out the door. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.